Here are the 12 most indebted African countries in 2024. Starts with number 12. Ghana. With a debt of $36.18 billion, Ghana has been facing a major debt crisis since the summer of 2022. Due to this situation, the IMF decided to intervene for a 17th support plan of $3 billion, which was approved in May 2023. The country will have more than 34.5 million inhabitants in 2024. Number 11. Tunisia. With a debt of $41.6 billion, Tunisia's debt has far exceeded reasonable levels of sustainability. Tunisia faces a brake on economic development and a threat of loss of sovereignty due to its debt. With a debt of 80% of GDP, Tunisia has an enormous need for money to pay the salaries of civil servants, of whom there are more than 680,000. The country will have more than 12 million inhabitants in 2024. Number 10. Ethiopia. With a debt of $58 billion, in 2023, public debt was contained at 39% of GDP, compared to 88% in Ghana and 140% in Zambia. Furthermore, less than a quarter of the external debt was owed to private creditors. Ethiopia is classified at risk of debt distress. In 2021, the country requested the Common Framework, which brings together Paris Club creditors and China, to try to reduce its debt. But the negotiations are slipping. The country will have more than 130 million inhabitants in 2024. Number 9. Angola. With a debt of $59.86 billion, Angola's external debt stands at approximately 52.91% compared to gross domestic product. Angola's debt is 25% to China or its state-owned banks, and 23% to other Chinese private lenders. The country will have more than 38 million inhabitants in 2024. Number 8. Mozambique. With a debt of $62.82 billion, corruption scandals and opaque management of public debt have contributed to worsening the country's economic situation. The country will have more than 34 million inhabitants in 2024. It should be noted that debt varies from country to country depending on various economic and political factors. These are also those that France and England previously colonized. Number 7. Kenya. With a debt of $70.75 billion, Kenya's public debt has reached a historic high. In January 2024, the International Monetary Fund announced that it had granted Kenya a loan of $941 million to help the country strengthen its finances. It is important to note that the term aid used by lenders such as the International Monetary Fund does not mean that the money lent is not repayable or not surcharged. There are two types of surcharges: surcharges based on copay. Surcharges based on duration. The higher the country's debt, the more likely the country is to become impoverished and lose its sovereignty. Number 6. Sudan. With a debt of $94.9 billion, Sudan has accumulated significant public debt over decades, largely due to internal conflicts, international sanctions and poor economic management. China is one of Sudan's largest bilateral creditors, with a significant share of Sudan's public debt. Other bilateral creditors include Saudi Arabia, Kuwait and the United Arab Emirates. Sudan is in arrears with multilateral financial institutions such as the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. A significant part of Sudan's debt consists of arrears, that is, payments due but not made. The country will have more than 47 million inhabitants in 2024. Number 5. Morocco. With a debt of $96 billion, or around 70% of its GDP. The main external creditors are multilateral institutions such as the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund and the African Development Bank. Morocco has also taken out loans from bilateral creditors, notably Gulf countries and the European Union. The country will have more than 38 million inhabitants in 2024. Number 4. Algeria. With a debt of $100 billion, the main external creditors are multilateral institutions such as the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank and the African Development Bank. Algeria has also taken out loans from bilateral creditors, notably Middle Eastern countries and China. The country will have more than 45 million inhabitants in 2024. Number 3. Nigeria. With a debt of $100.65 billion, Nigeria's external debt stands at about 30% of the total public debt. The main external creditors are multilateral institutions such as the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund and the African Development Bank. Nigeria has also taken out loans from bilateral creditors, notably China. The country will have more than 220 million inhabitants in 2024. Number 2. South Africa. With a debt of $262.6 billion, South Africa's external debt amounts to approximately 10% of total public debt. The main external creditors are multilateral institutions such as the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, as well as bilateral creditors such as Germany and Japan. The country will have more than 60 million inhabitants in 2024. And finally, the most indebted country in Africa is Egypt. With a debt of $415.68 billion, domestic debt represents the majority of Egypt's public debt, around 70% of the total. The main external creditors are multilateral institutions such as the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank and the African Development Bank, as well as bilateral creditors such as the United States, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. The country will have more than 112 million inhabitants in 2024. This is the end of the video. Take care of yourself and see you soon.